Okay, Pandorum's got a lot of stuff going on. Yeah, I mean, there's an awful lot of subplots and plots and context, as well as the crazy occasional what they refer to as the effect of Pandorum. It's where you kind of have a combination of paranoia that's heightened by bizarre psychological events. So there are sometimes in this movie where what you have been watching for like the past, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes isn't exactly what you've been watching. There are a few moments where they do a lot in the way of pretty decent mind-bending, suspense and whatnot. The very basic premise of this is you have two people who wake up out of what is an extended, like, hypersleep. And they're on a ship. Ship that, as they find out later, is essentially going out to try to find a new planet to colonize. As they're trying to figure out how to get the door open to the bridge, yes, you have one guy in the control room, trying to guide another guy to get the main power control so they can open the bridge. So one guy's stuck in the room, the other guy is traversing this gigantic maze, normally in the dark. And there are occasionally these really bizarre, I'm just going to call them mutants. And they do kind of range. Some of them are kind of bluish in nature, but they're all super fast, super ferocious. So they have the ability to almost run like aliens, and they use tools like predators. This guy also runs into a couple of other people on the ship. You've got a chick who fights like a mad woman. You've also got a guy, I'll just call him an Asian guy, because he really doesn't speak any English. The chick tends to fight with, what look like knives. The Asian guy fights with spears and those bizarre, jagged-looking swords. So yeah, you have one guy who, after you come out of the hyperspace sleep, you don't have that much in the way of memories. So he is regaining his memories, trying to figure out exactly what this ship is doing, while he's slowly recalling the fact that he's like the ship's engineer. So he has to try to make it to the main engine, to get everything up and running, to try to figure out where they are, what's going on. So you've got people who are in the roles who have no idea what's going on. So they're trying to figure out their situation at the same time you are. Nobody really knows what's going on. And they slowly begin to build over time what's happened before, what's going on now, and what they need to do in the future. This movie is deep. However, if you're looking for like a gore fest, no. It does have lots of decent scenes of violence every now and then. This is primarily a sci-fi thriller with a lot of different, textural elements going on at the same time. It's got that nice old school feel. You can tell he's actually crawling through stuff. It's got a decent amount of camera work. I love some of the cinematography. Certain shots, you can tell from the aliens, from the creature's perspective, and they've set traps throughout an awful lot of this area. What I found to be bizarre, with this taking place in the future, they had a problem powering up, one of the control rooms. They had a crank. The guy runs his little crank on the side and powers up the engine room. There's an emergency control lever to get out a stun gun. It's a punch lever. The non-lethal riot gun tries you to squeeze your hand repeatedly. I thought this was kind of different. Normally you think things in the far-flung future, you don't expect it to be like, okay, well, it's going to need somebody to squeeze a trigger like a dozen times to power up the shot for it. I thought that was kind of interesting. All in all, this is done very well. This is a very good, sci-fi thriller movie. Lots of very tense scenes. That's all I'm going to say now, because we're going to go into some spoilers in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now I'm going to go into some spoilers. If you don't want to hear spoilers, stop now. You've been warned. Here's some spoilers. They find out that Earth no longer exists. They've been sent on a one-way trip to find a new planet, essentially with all of the human race on board. But they also need to jumpstart all creatures. So they've got a room which is kind of like Noah's Ark. It's got everything. Also, during their hypersleep, some people were injected with something to help jumpstart evolution, to allow them to, wherever they landed, that way that most people could adapt relatively fast to the environment. Some people instead began to adapt to the ship's environment. That's all of your weird, bizarre mutants. They're actually humans who began to adapt to their environment being the ship. You found towards the very end, like the person that, I think this is Dennis Quaid, has been fighting with most of the time, does not exist. It is himself. Older Dennis Quaid is fighting younger Dennis Quaid. Yeah, he skipped the cycle, so he got to be alive and kill the whole crew to try to become essentially God, because he would be one of the people who gets to control everything that gets created on the new planet, Tanis. They found at the very end of the movie, they are not in space. The ship has crashed on Tanis. So it actually ends with the ship's engineer and super fighting chick escaping the ship. And a bunch of other tubes escaping the ship too. They never show if the tubes are humans in suspended animation or if they end up being more of the mutants. You know, the revelation of Earth having been destroyed, and this being essentially the new civilization for humanity at the end of the movie. That tied in well with the beginning. The beginning goes through, man first landed on the moon, population, current population, and then it ends with, Tanis year 1 population. So yeah, according to Pandorum, the Earth has been destroyed. And there's 1,213 people who are going to help colonize Tanis, which will become the new human civilization planet. Throw that in with a bunch of other really bizarre scenes, like the little mutant girl. Yeah, that's kind of freaky. Or when they run into another guy who happens to be, living there, who cooks for him, who drugs him so he can eat him. Yep. This has got some bizarre, unique moments to it. And it's done very well. I'm surprised lots of people, kind of pan this movie, but it's actually done well. It's got a lot of things going on. Either you like all the different subplots and main plots going on, or you find it to be convoluted. Either way, it is actually worth Netflixing or renting. It's not quite an own. I'm a big fan of see it first, and if you love it, own it. But this one was very good. This is a very, very solid movie.